For years, we have been told that the greatest danger in America's immigration debate is who controls the narrative. This week, in Portland, that warning became real. 2 people were shot by a federal agent. Within hours, a story hardened in the public mind. An innocent married couple, victims of a brutal state. Protests erupted. Democratic leaders spoke of fear, lawlessness, and federal abuse. But then, the Department of Homeland Security released names, records, and a sharply different account. Not a family, not bystanders, but, according to DHS, 2 Venezuelan illegal immigrants tied to the Tren de Aragua gang accused of weaponizing their vehicle against Border Patrol. This is not just about a shooting. It's about how modern America decides what is true before facts arrive. If you want to understand why trust has collapsed and why every incident now explodes into national crisis, stay with me. Because what happened next explains far more than Portland. And it forces a difficult question about power, perception, and belief. To understand why this moment matters, we have to slow down and separate the event from the meaning attached to it. A Border Patrol agent fires his weapon. 2 people are wounded. That is the event, but almost immediately, a larger story takes over, one that stretches far beyond Portland. Democratic leaders describe a pattern of federal recklessness. A mayor questions whether the federal government can be trusted at all. A governor frames the shooting as a product of fear-driven governance. A senator warns that federal presence itself is inflaming violence. At the same time, DHS presents a starkly different picture. Illegal entry, gang affiliation, prior arrests, and a vehicle allegedly used as a weapon. 2 narratives, same incident, opposite moral conclusion. This is the real issue. In modern America, legitimacy no longer flows from institutions. It flows from which story reaches people first. And once that story hardens, facts do not correct it, they collide with it. To see how we arrived at this point, we need to look backward. Because this conflict did not begin in Portland, to understand the roots of this conflict, we have to look at how immigration enforcement became a symbolic battlefield long before this shooting. Over the past several years, federal immigration agencies have ceased to be seen as neutral executors of law. They have become political symbols. For one side, they represent order, borders, and state authority. For the other, they represent overreach, fear, and systemic abuse. That shift matters, because once enforcement becomes symbolic, every encounter becomes interpretive. In this case, DHS emphasizes illegal entry dates, criminal histories, gang affiliation, and a final order of removal. Those details are not incidental. They are meant to assert legitimacy. This was law enforcement confronting threat. But Democratic leaders respond from a different framework. They do not dispute records. They dispute credibility. A mayor openly says the federal government can no longer be taken at its word. A governor frames enforcement itself as reckless governance. This is the deeper mechanism at work. Facts are filtered through trust or the absence of it. And when trust collapses, conflict becomes inevitable. That sets the stage for the first rupture. Then the first rupture arrives, and it arrives fast. The shooting itself becomes a spark, but the explosion comes afterward. As details remain limited, outrage accelerates anyway. Protests reignite. Calls are made to halt all ICE operations in Portland. Federal agents are no longer treated as investigators, but as suspects. This is the first mini-crisis. Not violence on the street, but violence in legitimacy. Democratic officials do not wait for a full investigation. They frame the incident as part of a national pattern. Minnesota, Portland, communities across America. The implication is clear. This is not an isolated act. This is systemic. DHS, sensing the narrative slipping, responds with forceful language names, criminal histories, gang ties, even capitalization. Revolting lies, the agency says. That choice matters. Institutions usually speak calmly. Here, they shout. That tells us something critical. The federal government understands that this battle is no longer legal. It is psychological. If you find this analysis useful, share it, because moments like this shape public memory far more than court rulings ever will. And this crisis exposes something deeper still. What this moment reveals is a mechanism most people never see. In earlier eras, facts moved first, emotions followed. Today, emotion moves first, and institutions scramble to catch up. DHS does not just describe what happened. It aggressively reframes identity. Illegal alien, gang associate, prostitute. These are not just descriptors. They are tools meant to reverse moral momentum. On the other side, democratic leaders use a different mechanism. They speak in values, not details. Fear, families, lawlessness. The goal is not to win a factual dispute. It is to anchor public feeling. This is how modern crises work. Each side selects a moral lens, then pulls facts into it. Once that happens, accountability becomes almost impossible. Any investigation is seen as biased before it begins. Any finding is dismissed as political. The system is no longer asking, what happened? It is asking, who do you trust? And when a society reaches that point, every enforcement action, no matter the facts, carries the potential to ignite the next crisis. That brings us to the second escalation. The second escalation comes not from the shooting, but from what follows it. As protests spread, this incident is no longer judged on its own terms. It is folded into another case, another death, another city, another agent claiming self-defense. In Minneapolis, an anti-ICE protester is killed after, according to the administration, attempting to run over an ICE agent. The details matter, but in public perception, they blur. 2 cities, 2 shootings, 1 conclusion. Federal enforcement itself is now portrayed as the accelerant. This is the second mini-crisis. Not just outrage, but contagion. Each incident reinforces the last. Each protest feeds the next. Context collapses. Causality disappears. For federal agencies, this is the nightmare scenario. Even actions claimed as self-defense are interpreted as provocation. Even silence is read as guilt. And for political leaders, escalation becomes incentive. Condemnation signals virtue. Restraint signals weakness. The result is a feedback loop, one that tightens with every headline. And in that loop, the people caught in the middle matter most. And this is where you enter the story. Because while institutions argue and leaders posture, you are left to absorb the consequences. Confusion, anger, fatigue. If you support immigration enforcement, you are told that defending borders is cruelty. If you fear federal overreach, you are told that questioning agents invites chaos. Either way, you are pushed to choose a side before you understand the facts. That pressure is not accidental. It is how polarization survives. You watch videos stripped of context. You hear phrases like weaponized vehicle or innocent family, and you are expected to react instantly. No pause, no nuance. And over time, something dangerous happens. You stop trusting outcomes altogether. Every investigation feels pre-rigged. Every explanation feels partisan. This is the human cost of narrative warfare. Not just division, but exhaustion. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by these constant crises, you're not alone. Pause. Share this analysis if it helps you think more clearly, because understanding how you are being pulled emotionally is the first step toward reclaiming judgment. And the impact doesn't stop at America's borders. When these incidents spill beyond local streets, they begin to reshape how America is seen abroad. Immigration enforcement is no longer a domestic policy dispute. It becomes a signal. Foreign governments watch how the United States handles borders, protests, and internal dissent. Criminal organizations watch even more closely. They study response times, political hesitation, and public backlash. When enforcement actions trigger mass protests and political paralysis, the message travels fast. State authority appears contested. Consensus appears fractured. At the same time, accusations of excessive force circulate globally, reinforcing narratives of American hypocrisy, law abroad, disorder at home. For allies, this raises doubts about stability. For adversaries, it offers opportunity. And for transnational criminal groups, the lesson is brutally practical. If enforcement is politically radioactive, pressure increases not on smugglers, but on institutions tasked with stopping them. This is the global consequence of domestic mistrust. Internal division weakens external credibility. America's power has always rested not just on force, but on legitimacy. When that legitimacy fractures internally, the shockwaves travel far beyond Portland. What comes next depends on which path the system chooses. Looking ahead, I see three possible futures, and none of them are abstract. The first is the optimistic path. Institutions slow down. Investigations regain credibility. Facts are allowed to land before narratives harden. Federal agencies speak with restraint. Political leaders wait before condemning. Trust does not fully return, but it stabilizes. The second is the middle path, what we are already living in. Every incident becomes a flashpoint. Every explanation is dismissed by half the country. Enforcement continues, protests continue, and exhaustion becomes the norm. The system holds, but only barely. The third is the dark path. Narrative replaces reality entirely. Federal authority is routinely challenged. Agents hesitate not because the law is unclear, but because legitimacy is gone. Criminal actors adapt faster than institutions. Public trust collapses into permanent suspicion. These futures are not determined by one shooting. They are determined by how societies process conflict. When truth becomes tribal, systems decay quietly until they fail loudly. The choice is not between order and compassion. It is between thinking slowly and reacting forever. And that brings us to the final question this moment demands. This story does not end with a verdict, a report, or a press conference. It ends with a choice. Every time an incident like this happens, America decides, often unconsciously, what kind of society it wants to be. One that waits for facts, or one that rewards outrage. DHS insists it acted in self-defense against criminal gang members. Democratic leaders insist federal power has become reckless. Both claims now exist simultaneously in the public mind, unreconciled. That tension will not be resolved by shouting louder. It will be resolved only if citizens demand something harder: patience, skepticism, and restraint applied to all sides. If we continue to treat every enforcement action as tyranny, authority erodes. If we dismiss every protest as hysteria, legitimacy erodes. Either way, the center collapses. I'll leave you with this. A nation does not fall when laws are broken. It falters when truth itself becomes optional. If you want deeper, calmer analysis of the forces shaping this country, follow this channel and share this video. Because the next crisis is already forming, and understanding it early may be the only real defense.